I went to this really cool flea market a couple of weeks ago. It was inside this big, huge cement multi-level parking structure that was originally built to serve this big business park. The main business of this business park was this electronics wholesaler that had a distribution center, and they also had an assembly center. And they also had all kinds of other smaller businesses to support this larger business: office supply shops, coffee shops, restaurants. But then when the wholesaler went out of business, all these other smaller shops went out of business as well. Apparently what had happened was that the wholesaler was borrowing too much money, but then when their market stopped growing, they suddenly had too much debt that their sales weren't able to support, so they just kind of stopped and quit and went belly up and walked away from the whole business. But somebody, I guess, figured out how to use this parking structure to have the flea market. They had all kinds of different people selling different things on different levels of this parking structure. They had clothing, they had food, they had furniture, they had homemade knickknacks, they had all kinds of interesting things. And the good part was that it was really, really cool inside, even though it was hot outside. One lady was selling all these candles that were based on aromatherapy. I've heard about aromatherapy before, and I know it's very complicated, but I never really took the time to understand very much about it. I used to have a friend that was heavily into it. It was her hobby, and one time she tried to explain to me the whole concept behind it, and it sounded very complicated, like a mix of biology, neurology, and chemistry. She was explaining to me how everyone needs to take time to calibrate your own unique collection of smells that will have the desired impact on your feelings and your emotions, because everybody is a little bit different, and because smells affect our brain on such a deep level, you need to take time to make sure that you calibrate your own smells to have your own personal effects. And some smells can trigger some very, very deep memories. For example, if you smell something that you haven't smelled for a long time, it could trigger a set of memories from your early childhood. And this is because smells go kind of directly past the conscious part of our brain. The nose is connected to parts of the brain that are much deeper beneath the surface level consciousness that our eyes and ears have to go through. Smells are almost beyond words. Smells connect to the brain beneath the level of language, beneath the level of conscious thought. She's telling me there's a technique that you can combine smells and meditation to connect with your spiritual side. And this was a technique put in back when we were spiritual beings to be kind of a safety hatch, a release valve, if we needed to get back in touch with our spiritual side from our physical beings. And the way it works is you need to first find your 5 unique smells that are calibrated to your own unique mind-body system. And this takes quite a while. And you need to combine this with some very, very deep meditation. There's this theory that when we were spiritual beings, we put our greatest gifts behind the place that we would never look, which is thought to be our greatest fears. So that the only way we could access our greatest gifts would be to go through our greatest fears. But this isn't quite correct. It turns out that the hardest thing for us to do is to sit quietly with our own thoughts for a long period of time. And this is what you need to do, combined with the unique calibration of smells, to access your spiritual side. What you do is first find your unique calibration of 5 different senses, and this takes a while. And once you have these 5 different senses, these 5 different smells calibrated, you take the candles and you lay them out in the shape of a pentagram, and then you have to lie in the center of these candles and sit very, very quietly for at least 20 to 30 minutes. And if your mind is in the quietest space possible, if your mind is sufficiently quiet, then the smells will connect with that quiet part of your deep mind, and that will flip on the switch. It will flip on the switch that will allow you to connect permanently to your spiritual side from your physical self. This will allow you to access superconscious mind in real time. This will allow you to access infinite intelligence in real time. This will allow you to have out-of-body experiences whenever you want. This will allow you to practice astral projection. This will allow you to access information from the past, from the future, from inside anybody's brain that you like. It turns out that the people that set up this flea market didn't get proper approval from the city. It turns out that this is somewhat similar to the housing collapse that happened back in 2008. A lot of people found out that they didn't have to suffer from foreclosures because a lot of the banks that were foreclosing on a lot of people actually didn't really have the proper paperwork. So if you did get foreclosed on and you did pursue the bank legally, a lot of banks turned out didn't have the right paperwork that showed that they actually owned the property. The same kind of thing is happening now in the commercial real estate market, because this one particular business park, for example, there's at least 4 or 5 different entities that started this vacant lot to develop it, to create these businesses, to rent out the businesses. And then when they finally went bankrupt and walked away, there's all these empty buildings and nobody really knows who owns them. And because this is all private property, the police can't go in there unless the owner of the private property makes a complaint. But nobody really even knows who the owner is. So in the future, there's probably going to be a lot of this stuff happening, a lot of these abandoned commercial real estate places where a lot of people are thinking very cleverly on how to use them to make money. And so this means in the coming future, there'll be a lot of opportunities for those who can think outside the box. There'll be a lot of opportunities for those who can think creatively about how you can make money. They had this one shop that was selling these really delicious carne asada burritos, and I recognized one of the guy from one of the shops I normally go to, and I asked him what the connection was, and he just kind of looked at me like, don't ask, don't tell. It was some kind of a never talk about Fight Club type of deal. I guess all these people are aware that they're not really supposed to be there, but they're also aware that as long as they don't talk too much about this, they can continue to get away with this.